I'm reading each sentence. Nor can the human confusion of values which obliterates the distinction between spiritual and moral and even claims that the moral is the only true spiritual element in our nature be of any use to us. For ethics is a mental control. I think we have to read sentence by sentence, no? Okay. So we have to make a distinction between spiritual and moral. So morality comes from the mind, okay, our normal mind. The animal has no morality because it cannot think. But the moment the human being gets the mind and he evolves from the animal, he has reason and a mind, and he starts distinguishing between that which is good and that which is bad. In the beginning, good and bad for him are only sensations. That which is giving him a pleasant sensation is good for him, and that which is giving him an unpleasant sensation is bad for him. It's almost physical in the beginning, okay, physical, vital. But slowly it goes towards also concepts. It starts understanding that when someone scolds you or someone hits you, it is bad. So it starts from that level, and someone praises you, it is good. So the idea of good and bad comes up in the mind. This is morality, and it takes it even into the concepts. Truth is good, falsehood is bad. Okay? So from the physical vital level of sensations, it goes to ideas. Okay? Good and bad. That which is good and that which is bad. This is a huge discussion in philosophy. What is good and what is bad? Okay? Ultimately, it has become very, very subtle. The book I read about in philosophy, it says that you go from the sensations. Take bread. Bread is good for you. Okay? And when you eat something very, very hot, chili, it is bad for you. It starts from the physical level. And slowly, slowly it evolves to the concepts. So this is morality. Telling a lie is bad. Telling the truth is good. So this is the moral. But it is not absolute truth. When you go to above the mind and go to the spiritual level of consciousness, you see that these are limited. It's not untrue. It's not false. Morality is fine at its level of the mind. In fact, it is very, very valid at the mental level. But when you go to the spiritual level, the things you start seeing things in a different way. You start seeing that it is not absolutely true to say that telling a lie is bad. You can tell a lie to save someone. Of course, you can avoid that. But that is the thing. Even stealing, okay, becomes different. If I steal something because I don't have it myself to give it to a poor man, I steal a piece of bread and give it to that poor man who is starving. I'm stealing, but it's not bad. So it depends from the outer action to the inner attitude. That is a spiritual. So this is it. The laws of the of morality and ethics is established by the mind of man. And he extends it and says everybody should do the same. This is morality. But when you go to the spiritual level of consciousness, your views change and the spirit is laying down the laws. But there the laws are not as rigid as in the mind. They become flexible. The truth, the essential truth of morality remains, but it doesn't become rigid. As I said, it is always bad to tell a lie, but in certain circumstances, it need not be bad. So the law, moral law, becomes more flexible and less absolute. Okay? It starts becoming relative. So this is spiritual. In other words, what is bad for one person may be very good for another person. So this is the, so in the sense you have to make a distinction between spiritual and moral. Okay? And there are some people who say that morality is the best because they have absolutely no idea of a spiritual existence. All right, so I go to the next sentence. I just reread this sentence. Nor can the human confusion of values, which obliterates, effaces, removes, okay, rubs out the distinction between the spiritual and moral, and even claims that the moral is the only true spiritual element in our nature, be of any use to us. For ethics is a mental control. There you are, very clear. And the limited erring mind is not and cannot be the free and ever luminous spirit. It is equally impossible to accept the gospel that makes life the one aim, takes its elements fundamentally as they are, and only calls in half spiritual or pseudo spiritual light to flush and embellish it. Okay, so this sentence also we'll see what is it. It is equally impossible to accept the gospel, the scripture that makes life the one aim. Life is the only aim, not spirit. There is no spirit, no? Life, the physical life of man with his mind, life and body, that's the only thing. To accept the gospel that makes life the one aim, takes its elements fundamentally as they are, whatever is actually there, and only calls in a half spiritual and pseudo spiritual light to flush and embellish it, to make your moral ideas a bit of spiritual light is put into that. Embellish, to make beautiful. Bell, from the French word bell. So embellish, to make beautiful. Pseudo spiritual light. It's not full light, but it's half light. To flush. Look at the language also, it is so interesting. When you flush something, it fills. Okay, so you fill your action with this half light. Okay, and embellish, make it more acceptable. You will see very often nowadays, everybody says, when they lead a moral life or just try to be a little pure, they say, I am leading a spiritual life. You will see that all these Bollywood stars are always saying, I am living a spiritual life. But there is no spirituality at all there. Maybe in some it is there, but they normally misunderstand. So that's what they are elaborating it. So I go to the next sentence. Inadequate too is the very frequent attempt at a misalliance between the vital and the spiritual. A mystic experience within an aestheticized intellectual and sensuous paganism, or an exalted hedonism outside, leaning upon it and satisfying itself in the glow of a spiritual sanction. This is a little more difficult to understand, but there are people who feel that okay, you can start interpreting, okay, you can go step by step and come to an absolutely wrong conclusion. It is always good to be happy. Everybody will accept. Okay? But what is the cause of happiness? That is the question. Okay? Suppose you eat something nice, you are happy. Suppose you do a good deed to somebody else, you are happy. That's fine. But the moment you start extending it to sensations, and it goes as far as to say that even sex is possible with spirituality. I have met one person from the California Institute who came here. He was a Spaniard, okay, and he came here, and he was insisting that sex is very, very compatible with spiritual life. There is a 1% truth in that if you are not attached. But the question is 99% you are attached, and therefore you have to avoid it. So this is what Siddha is saying. Sensuous paganism, okay, and aestheticized intellectual. The intellectual concept is that which is pleasant to you is good, fine, no problem. But you are aestheticizing that and taking it to its extreme limit. Whatever is beautiful is good, whatever is enjoyable is good. So you can misinterpret it. So very sensitive, and you have to give examples to yourself to understand what he's saying. Okay? Aestheticized intellectual and sensuous paganism, or exalted hedonism. Hedonism is the principle of pleasure. But hedonism, when it started, it was the not only pleasure but bliss. Okay? Bliss can be eternal and pleasure can be very, very temporary. But you get confused between the two. Hedonism, you are exalting it and saying that's the ultimate principle. Okay. There are even English philosophers who say that. There is utilitarianism, then there is hedonism. Okay. What is good and what is bad in philosophy? The utilitarian says whatever is useful to man, which is useful, that is the good. So this is a very, very mental concept, and certainly it is not true at all. Okay? So then there is the exalted hedonism. No, Ananda, happiness is the aim of life. But happiness is coming from where? From wherever it comes. So you exalt the hedonism. You raise it to a higher level where it is not valid. Pleasure is okay at them if you are leading an ordinary life. But if you take pleasure and take it to spiritual life and say that always pleasure is good, again you have difficulty. So this is the gradation is very important, and there is often a confusion between the two. As I told you, this man from America was insisting that it's very, very possible to combine the two. Okay. So there's great confusion. That's what we're saying. All these things are not allowed in the integral yoga. Inadequate. It's not enough. Inadequate too is a frequent attempt, not at all uncommon, at a misalliance between the vital and the spiritual. A mystic experience within which, with an aestheticized intellectual and sensual paganism or exalted hedonism. Oh, I've got an excellent example of this. You have heard of Osho? That fellow in Pune was an actor. He has passed away. Okay. Osho says exactly the same thing. What was his name? You know what I'm talking about?
Rajneesh.
Rajneesh.
Yes, Rangada.
Yes,
Rajneesh.
Rajneesh. He says the same
He has
thing.
the ashram in Pune.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And he went to America and established himself there, and they're taking the hedonism to its extreme limit. And you know, it is surprising. He went to California and established an ashram there, and there were many people who joined him. But the American government was not at all happy with him because he was encouraging all this nonsense and taking pleasure to such extremes. You know how many cars he had? It is said that he had 50 cars. Now what's the point? Enjoyment, happiness, total misinterpretation. So Sundar is not giving examples, but that's exactly what he's saying. Vital and spiritual mixture, exalted hedonism, taking hedonism to a level where it is not applicable anymore. The ashram is still there, but Osho is not there, but there are many followers. He has many followers. He may have had some experience. Sundar is admitting, no? A mystic experience within, inside. The inner being has a mystic experience, but with an aestheticized intellectual and social paganism exalted outside. So very clearly you can see that even if you have a spiritual experience in your inner being, in the outer being you can be completely confused and even lead a hopeless life on the outside. He is the best example of that. I should have thought of that fellow earlier, but I did not. But here what Sundar is saying, absolutely the best example is that, Osho. Okay? Rajneesh.
What does, hello?
Tell me, I'm listening.
What does sensuous paganism exactly mean?
Okay. I'll put it in very blunt terms. There can be a gradation. But paganism is, a pagan is one who does not believe in Christianity. Okay? And Christianity wants a purity in the outside. Okay? On the outside. That means paganism, Christianity wants morality. Okay? They want a moral being which is absolutely not doing wrong things. So sensuous, interpret it as the most sensuous thing you can do is sex. So you can interpret this as sensuous sex in the outer life combined with an inner, some sort of experience in the inner being, but being completely misunderstood at the outer level. Sensuous refers to senses, which is vital, physical, the nerves. That gets excited. So you are combining that. Okay?
Rangada, paganism is worship of the animals and the nature, no?
Yes, that also.
Defy nature.
But the word pagan, yeah, you are right. But pagan means that which is not, because the Christians don't believe. So pagan is one who is not a Christian. But what you're saying is absolutely correct. That is the one that this is applying here. Okay, worship of nature. So paganism Some amount of spiritual experience is there in the inside, but outside it is completely misinterpreted and wrongly stated. So, the fellow who had talked with me, he is not well known, but Osho is well known all over the world. And you know what happened to him? He was thrown out by the American government. So he went there and he was thrown out and he came back and established in Pune. And our Indians are so gullible and so tolerant that even today the ashram exists. It's a very rich place, I heard. I've seen some pictures also. It is still there, very much. Okay. So Srimni is saying all this.
He ran away from there also, no?
Pardon,
He ran
pardon?
away from there. He ran away from the Pune ashram also, I think. He
Oh,
was forced to.
that I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
Yes.
I was not interested enough to see his life. Because I didn't
No,
believe
it was in the news.
Okay, okay. So maybe he was chased away or whatever, but his ashram is still there in Pune. Okay, we go to the next sentence.
Rangata?
Yeah, tell me.
Rangata?
Yeah.
I'm from that school, the California Institute of Integral Studies. I studied there. I'm still student there. And I'm writing a dissertation. And that school, that's the one of the founder is Chowdhury, Haridas Chowdhury.
Okay.
And people say that he was recommended by Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah.
So that's why our school, the CIIS, California Institute, that one has always say the strong connection to Sri Aurobindo.
Yes.
And in the seminar room where I had classes, the seminar room, especially that big seminar room, had the photo of Sri Aurobindo and the mother in the room.
Yes.
And that's how I came to Sri Aurobindo Ashram when I visited years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you said, the American culture and also the paganism is huge. It's a big, huge history, especially in California, and actually all over the America. And so sometimes I wonder, Sri Aurobindo sent the Haridas Chowdhury, and this school has been like this, the kind of a specific, how can I say, like blending the Indian culture and the American and Western psychology and spirituality. So yeah, I just like to add that.
What you're saying, I know. Haridas Chaudhary was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo in a certain sense, and he was so long as he lived. Okay, that California Institute was fine. Okay, there was no problem. But after he has passed away, it has descended into many, many wrong ways. Okay, so today it is not at all what it used to be. That is sure. But in the beginning, it was very fine. It was as you said, Haridas Chaudhary was actually Sri Aurobindo allowed him. Okay, so I'm not sure of the details, but yes, he was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, and that's why I think it's called the California Institute of Integral something, na?
Yes, okay? Integral Studies.
There you are. California Institute of Integral Study.
Yes.
But then after he passed away, things were not the same anymore. It passed on to other hands, and his wife, Beena, took over. But there was a slight drop then. And when she also went away, it became quite different. It is not what it used to be. So this man that I'm talking about, he came from there. He may not be absolutely representative of the institute, but anyway, this was his ideas, okay, which are not at all valid. So anyway, so I'm only telling you all this because Srimde is mentioning that these things happen, and it is not at all part of the integral yoga. That's what Srimde is pointing out. It is not enough. You can't do this. You can't combine the two. Spirituality is quite different. Okay? So I go to the next sentence. So sensuous paganism, exactly, we have got these an aestheticized intellectual. Aestheticized intellectual is slightly better than sensuous paganism. So sensuous paganism, you can take it as the best example of Osho, okay, if you want. Or exalted hedonism, outside. So some experience is there in the inside and it gets completely outside, totally different. So this is not acceptable for the integral yoga. Even the outside must become pure. Outside, leaning upon it and satisfying itself with the glow of a spiritual sanction. Just see that. I had a spiritual experience, and my spiritual experience is sanctioning what I'm doing outside. It does not. But you fool yourself and say it is sanctioning what I'm doing outside. This was listening. For this too is a precarious and never successful compromise. It doesn't work out. And it is as far from the divine truth and its integrality as a puritanic opposite. So which is the puritanic opposite? The puritanic opposite is the outside in my life, in my body-mind life, I am a Puritan. In other words, I don't indulge in anything that is considered bad. I don't tell lies, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't womanize, I don't do any of these things. But the desires are still there in the mind. That's it. A Puritan is, they don't mind if all these things are there in your mind. But outside, you must exercise a certain physical purity of action. So that's certainly not enough for the spiritual life. So Srinath is saying it is as bad as that. In the one case, outside you're not doing anything, but inside you are full of desires and you are actually sometimes even, you may not agree with it, but sometimes you are even encouraging these thoughts. Okay? You go on running them and taking mental pleasure out of them. This is one. But the other one is you are allowing all these things also to happen, but it is based on some sort of a spiritual experience inside. So all these are two different things altogether. Yeah? So one is it starts with a spiritual experience inside, but when it comes outside, completely misunderstanding and misapplying the truth and indulging in all sorts of things. Okay. So this is one, and the other one is what Srinath is saying, the what's the word he's using? Puritanic opposite. A Puritan is one who does not do anything considered morally improper. Okay? So he does not tell lies, he does not drink, he does outside very, very clean. And people will say, oh, what a fine man. Okay? But spiritually, he may be very fine morally. Okay? We can accept that. But from the point of view of spirituality, no value at all. So, Puritanic opposite. These are all stumbling solutions of the fallible human mind, groping for a transaction between the high spiritual summits and the lower pitch of the ordinary mind motives and life motives. There you are very clearly, he is saying, these are all stumbling solutions of the fallible human mind, human mind which is capable of mistakes, fallible. It can make mistakes, erroneous. Groping for a transaction, it is trying to not remove all your desires and your wrong movements, it is trying to find a justification in spirituality. Transaction, a connection between the spiritual and the outside life, which is still imperfect. But you are trying to justify your imperfect things, and there also there are so many gradations. Some of the things can be justified, some of them can't be, and you go to the extreme limit of even taking things which are absolutely not okay, like in the case of the Osho, as we said. Whatever partial truth may be hidden behind them, that truth can only be accepted when it has been raised to the spiritual level, tested in the supreme truth consciousness, and extricated from the soil and error of the ignorance. Now, a little discussion on this. What does Srinath mean by whatever partial truth may be behind them? Okay. Now be prepared for something. So, is it possible for a spiritual man to eat and drink those things which are forbidden? Is it okay for him to even have children? Okay. The answer is yes, if he is totally unattached He is absolutely pure inside, and the actions which are considered normally immoral outside, but don't affect him at all. They have no importance at all. The outer has no importance. That's the small partial truth that he is speaking about. Of course, Srimda doesn't want that at all, but there is a partial truth in it. The one who is spiritual, I'll tell you a case of it. There used to be a Rameshwaram. Okay, Rameshwaram is at the, it's an island at the tip of the Indian peninsula in the Indian Ocean. So there is a train that goes there and there is an ashram there. Okay, Rameshwaram ashram is a place of pilgrimage for the Indians. And there used to be a chief priest there. Okay, even our president Abdul Kalam came from Rameshwaram. Okay, he was there. He was a Muslim, of course, but the chief priest in the temple was Neelakanta Shastri. And he got interested and he was coming here and seeing the mother. And mother used to often also have meditation with him. One day she said that he is absolutely pure. But you know, he was not considered from the outside point of view very pure. He used to tell, mother used to send everybody to him. And there used to be a huge procession of ashramites all going to him in those days. Okay? She used to send many, many people. Pranata refused to go, Dayakar refused to go. Okay? But Satprem, and Satprem had a lot of interaction with him. Okay, Navajat and so many others, they all went trooping there to him. Okay, but finally, even there was also ambition in him, and finally there was a cut. Okay, so he is also another example of this. You may be pure inside. You may even, when he used to come to the ashram, he used to stay in the corner house, and now that house is gone. That he used to stay in the house. It is quite a big house, and mother had given him that house, and he used to be there. And all these, I'm using a Bengali word, homra chomra. That means some people who are supposed to be in some authority. Okay, so the society and many others, they used to all go there to him, and he used to tell them, "Come on, let's go and to a cinema today." And he himself had 3 children, but mother had found him absolutely pure inside. So here is a case where you are pure inside and you are also indulging, okay, in acts which are considered to be non-spiritual, but it's not affecting you. Even that is not enough for Sridhar. The outside also must be absolutely pure. So Sridhar is saying very clearly, whatever partial truth may be there in it, this is what he is mentioning. Even that is not acceptable. When it has been raised to the spiritual level, tested in the supreme truth consciousness, and extricated from the soil and error of the ignorance. Sridhar wants 100% purity from the highest level to the lowest level. He wants absolute purity. Okay? So this is what is a very interesting para, and you must know cases, and you must know exactly what Sridhar is speaking about. It's not very easy to understand, very subtle, but these are all the possible cases. Okay, so very gross instances are there of, as we said, Osho and that other man from California Institute. But this Neelakanta Shastri was a very mixed thing. He was spiritual, and he was a tantric actually. Okay, so and the tantra also wants exactly that. They want enjoyment in the physical world. The aim is pure enjoyment, but it doesn't always work out. That's why the left-hand path got into a very bad reputation. There is a right-hand path also for the tantrics, but the left-hand path fell into great disreputation. They got a very bad reputation because they were indulging in things which they should not have because they were not pure. Okay, so you reread the paragraph, and you have to have a lot of examples. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand what Sridhar is. But he is admitting, whatever partial truth may be hidden behind them. Okay? All this type of mixture there can be a truth, very partial truth, but it's not the absolute truth. As I said, we must be very, very clear. Srila wants an absolute purity, transparency. Okay, it must be absolutely like clear water, right from the top to the bottom. When you see images and symbols, it's like a lake which is absolutely calm, and from the top you can see all the stones below, you can see very clearly because there is no movement and there is absolute transparency. That's a purity required in the interior yoga. Okay? Let's read the next one. Pallavi,
Yes,
you,
Ram.
because your Tuesday is your day, sometimes I let others read, but today you read.
Yes, Ram. In sum, it may be safely affirmed that no solution offered can be anything but provisional until a supramental truth consciousness is reached, by which the appearances of things are put in their place and their essence revealed, and that in them which derives straight from the spiritual essence. In the meanwhile, our only safety is to find a guiding law of spiritual experience, or else to liberate a light within that can lead us on the way until that greater direct truth consciousness is reached above us or born within us. For all else in us that is only outward, all that is not a spiritual sense or seeing, the constructions, representations, or conclusions of the intellect, the suggestions or the instigations of the life force, the positive necessities of physical things are sometimes half lights, sometimes false lights that can at best only serve for a while or serve a little, and for the rest either detain or confuse us. The guiding law of spiritual experience can only come by an opening of human consciousness to the divine consciousness. There must be the power to receive in us the working and command and dynamic presence of the divine Shakti and surrender ourselves to her control. It is that surrender and that control which bring the guidance. But the surrender is not sure. There is no absolute certitude of the guidance so long as we are besieged by mind formations and life impulses and instigations of ego, which may easily betray us into the hands of a false experience. This danger can only be countered by the opening of a now 9/10 concealed inmost soul or psychic being that is already there but not commonly active within us. That is the inner light we must liberate. For the light of this inmost soul is our one sure illumination so long as we walk still amidst the siege of the ignorance, and the truth consciousness has not taken up the entire control of our Godward endeavor. The working of the divine force in us under the conditions of the transition and the light of the psychic being turning us always towards the conscious and seeing obedience to that higher impulsion and away from the demands and instigations of the forces of the ignorance, these between them create an ever progressive inner law of our action, which continues till the spiritual and supramental can be established in our nature. In the transition, there may well be a period in which we take up all life and action and offer them to the divine for purification, change, and deliverance of the truth within them. Another period in which we draw back and build a spiritual wall around us, admitting through its gates only such activities as consent to undergo the law of spiritual transformation. A third in which a free and all-embracing action, but with new forms fit for the utter truth of the Spirit, can again be made possible. These things, however, will be decided by no mental rule, but in the light of the soul within us, and by the ordaining force and progressive guidance of the divine power that secretly or overtly first impels, then begins clearly to control and order, and finally takes up the whole burden of the yoga.
Yeah. So this paragraph is telling you how difficult is the spiritual life which Swayanambhava wants. The ordinary spiritual life, okay, you just concentrate and go to the second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness, and you are satisfied. But for Swayanambhava, that's not enough. So it's a very big para, and there are lot of things which he has just hinted at, and we have to look at that very carefully. So it's already 28. Now nearly 8:30. That means we have got only 5 minutes. We certainly can't finish the para. So we'll do this again next time. But what I can do in this 5 minutes that is there, quickly read the summary and have a brief discussion on the summary. So what he's saying in the para. So 1 second. All solutions to the problem of imperfection in the physical world, because imperfection in the physical world will always remain. If you are even in spiritual consciousness, the physical world will always remain an imperfection. If you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness also, but Swayanambhava doesn't want that. Even in imperfections, if it is there, it's not enough for the integral yoga. Okay? So all solutions to the problem of imperfection in the physical world or even in the spiritual planes are partial. It is in the third level only of the supramental, the Gnostic plane, that the solution to all the problems in the first and second levels is found. So first level, the normal life of man. There are plenty of problems, but normally man accepts the problems and tries to solve it as best as he can. He often can't, but he accepts them. Okay. The examples are practical problems, okay, intellectual problems, even his day-to-day life problems. So many problems are there, but he accepts them. The Gnostic plane, that the solution to all the problems in the first and second level is found. The second level is the spiritual planes of consciousness. Everything is revealed in its rightful place in manifestation when you go to the third level of the Supramental. Each thing, however defective, even repulsive to the human being, is shown its proper location and purpose without any rejection. So this is part of that, whatever truth there is. Okay. So even that which is the ugliest and the most horribly anti-divine, there is some element of truth in it. Okay. So that is what Swayanambhava has been saying in the last para. So everything is there, the divine is also here, but you must see that. Each thing, however defective, even repulsive to the human being, is shown its proper location and purpose without any rejection. The others are rejecting it, but you don't reject, you understand why it is there. One then understands the perfection of the whole as well as the parts. The surface appearances have also their role to play in the cosmos and find their justification. One then understands the total reality as well as the essential reality of all created things. So, what is the essential reality and what is the total reality? The essential reality is the transcendent, only the divine. There is no physical world, there is no manifestation. But when there is a manifestation, we have discussed that many times, the transcendent becomes the universe, and when he is manifesting the universe, there is a diminution, a limitation, otherwise forms can't come. Forms come only with diminution and, if you want, materialization. So the universe becomes a slightly less divine. Then finally you come down to the individual, it becomes even less divine, but essentially it is divine. The essential divine is there everywhere, but now when you go to the third level, you understand the essential divine, but you also understand the total divine. Everything in the physical world, however ugly, you begin to understand its place and its necessity. Okay. One very easy example is when you make a mistake, people start cursing you. If a servant makes a mistake, he is dismissed. Okay? When an executive in a company, you make a serious mistake, you are thrown out. But mistakes also are a way of learning. Okay? With that you understand. I mean, mistakes are not tolerated in the physical world, but when you are in the spiritual plane of consciousness, you understand that an error is a way to the truth. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. But long before the difficult goal is reached, we have to find a guiding law of and from spiritual experience. So how to do that? The way is to find the way to find it is to rise to the self or plunge inwards and contact the psychic being. There are two solutions. One is to rise to the self, and the other is to plunge inwards. The rising to the self is vertical. You go out of your body mind life. But plunging inwards is horizontal. You go deep into yourself and contact the psychic being. Except these two, all the rest belonging to the outer surface nature, thought, emotion, and action. In other words, thought, mind, vital, and body are only half lives, and even sometimes false lives, which can confuse and delay the spiritual journey. So, how to find this divine guidance? It is by surrender to the divine power. What the divine power gives us, we must be able to receive, hold, and assimilate. But the surrender is initially defective and partial. The guidance too is partial. The danger of being misled is avoided if the psychic being is found hidden deep behind the heart. The psychic is found hidden behind the veils of mind, behind the veil of life, and behind the veil of the body. But once the psychic is found, its infallible guidance never makes a mistake, ensures a safe passage through all difficulties and dangers. The light of the psychic being must be discovered within oneself, since it is that which guarantees a safe passage. In the mind field of yoga, okay, mind field is an image of the war. The ground is laid with mines, and when you step on it, you are blown up. So, the yoga is a minefield full of dangers. This is because the psychic has discriminating powers and never falters or falls for deceitful suggestions. The psychic purification allows the divine power to work in our being, and the two together, the divine power from above and the psychic surrender and obedience from within, work together for spiritual progress. From the outer life to a spiritual plane, and ultimately to the supramental summit. This inward and upward journey can be at various stages follow different methods. In one, we open ourselves to the lower nature and the external world, offering everything to the Mother for the purpose of purification and elevation. This is one method, surrender to the divine. Another method, we may exclude the world, plunge inwards, build walls of protection from external forces. You isolate yourself from the world. In a third process, we can again open ourselves and readmit the external forces, individual and universal, but with a new status of consciousness. We may then do all works, but with a reoriented upward consciousness. But these three stages are spontaneous and determined by inner guidance, and they are not decided by the limited mind. At last, the divine openly works in man with his full cooperation, in contrast to the earlier waking of the divine force from behind the veil of preference. This is what he said here. So as you can see, even the summary is quite complex. So we'll do this next time. Okay. So we have to make a note. Next Tuesday, we'll redo this para. And the para is beginning with in sum. And the page number is 137. So redo 137, beginning with the para in sum. It's a very interesting para that Sridhar has given the solution to the problem of spirituality. How to go about it. Several solutions he has given. Okay? So we have gone 3 minutes beyond our
Yes.
time. Even 5 minutes was not enough even for the summary. Okay. So Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Au revoir, Rangada. Bonjour. Merci.
Thank you, Rangada. Thank you, Rangada.